Intelligence Committee we're talking about right now, as well as the Judiciary Committee. Congressman Gowdy, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I want to give you a chance right away to respond to this memo sent by the Assistant Attorney General here to Devin Nunes, the chairman of your House Intelligence Committee. Says it would be reckless to release that memo without showing it to the Department of Justice for them to review it. What do you say?
Well, Aaron, thank you for having me on. And let me say this at the outset. I have tremendous respect for the Department of Justice and the FBI. I worked in and with them for 18 of my professional years. So there's no member of Congress that holds that department in higher esteem than I do. I have concerns about what was done in the spring and the fall of 2016. And I'm not a critic of the department. I'm not someone who alleges the department is corrupt. I'm a fan of the department, and I have concerns about what they did in 2016. So I would say this to my friend Stephen Boyd, let's lower the rhetoric. I don't care if you see the memo, but let's be clear about this, Aaron. The memo was distilled from information that the department gave us. So it's not like there's new information. Everything in the memo they already have. What they don't know specifically is what are their complaints, and I'm fine to share them with them, but you can't possibly say a memo is reckless if you haven't read it.
So let me ask you a crucial question here. Have you seen the underlying intelligence, classified intelligence, that this memo, right, because this is a summary written by the Republican chairman, have you seen the actual intelligence that it is based on? And is it 100% consistent with the memo as you have seen it?
The answer to your first question, Aaron, is yes. I may be the only member who's read it all. I went to the Department of Justice on a couple of different occasions.
Jerry Nadler, Democrat, told me yesterday that he had as well.
All right, that'd be two. Well, Jerry's not on Intel. Jerry's on Judiciary. More power to him. I think everybody ought to go down there and read it. It's really hard to have a conversation about what's in documents when you hadn't read those documents. Yep. Glad Jerry did it. I've read it all. I have concerns about the process, about representations that may be made in court pleadings. I have concerns about the duty of government to provide complete, full, accurate information. You know, FBI agents and prosecutors are not advocates at this stage. We are representatives to the court. So there is an obligation to present accurate, full, complete information. And that's true in every criminal case or every counterintelligence case. They just don't get the scrutiny that this one does.
Okay, they're saying, though, and then, again, I just want to make the point, Stephen Boyd, the Assistant Attorney General, who signed this letter that I'm looking at right now, it says in it, among other things, not only do they think it would be reckless to release Chairman Nunes' memo, but they have seen no evidence of any wrongdoing to the FISA process. And the reason that this is so crucial, again, let's make the point, Stephen Boyd is Donald Trump's nominee. He is saying to you all that he has not seen any evidence of what is being alleged.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say this again. I like Stephen. I work well with him. It's really difficult to say a memo is reckless when you haven't read it. To the extent he says that they've seen no evidence of any impropriety or untowardness or inappropriate conduct during the process, we just respectfully disagree. And that happens from time to time. Lawyers can look at the same fact pattern and draw two different conclusions. I'm sure Adam Schiff is going to do a minority memo where he doesn't see any problems. So, but what that advocates for, though, Aaron, is the release of non-classified material, release it in an appropriate form, and let the public decide. That's what that advocates for.
But how is that consistent with your saying, how can anyone truly talk about this and the implications of it if they haven't seen the underlying information? From what I understand, nobody's advocating to release the underlying information for what is a partisan memo that's coming out of it because it's so classified. Are you saying the underlying information that you read, the top secret information, should also be released so everyone can read the source data and then decide if they think the summary is fair or not?
No, I don't. The president can declassify it. My counsel to him is don't do it. Do nothing to jeopardize sources and methods. Do nothing to jeopardize the women and men in the intelligence community. But you and I are having a conversation about it right now without divulging classified information. People do it all day, every day. It can be done. You have to do it adroitly and you have to do it carefully, but you can have a conversation. I mean, we'll do it right now. Do you think information should be vetted before it is included in a court proceeding? That would be a question I have for you. If a hypothetical source is being paid by a political opponent, do you think that should be shared with a court or with a judge? See, you and I just did it, and I think the answer is yes, that should be shared with a court. And if it's not shared with a court, then you got to tell me why it wasn't important enough to do so.
Chairman, I want to ask you about a couple of other things tonight. One is the other news that has been breaking over the past few hours regarding the text messages exchanged between Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page. Thousands of FBI-issued phones, we are finding out today, were affected by this technical glitch. All right, it resulted in 5 months of missing text data. And we are now told, a law enforcement official is telling CNN, about 1 in 10 FBI phones were affected. So it's not just these two. It's thousands. It's 1 in 10 phones that were affected that has this exact same data outage. Do you accept that this was a technical glitch, or do you think there's some sort of conspiracy theory here?
Now, I'm not a conspiracist, and I have no reason to impeach or undercut what the department is representing and what the FBI has represented. It puts those of us who are fans and supporters of the department and the Bureau in an awkward position. There's a 5-month gap that's really important, but I have no reason to not believe them. I hope Michael Horowitz or someone else will verify it, but I'm not a conspiracist. I'm every bit as concerned about the text we do have as the 5 months worth that we don't. And the ones that we do have evidence a level of bias that I have never seen before from any law enforcement officer, and it is troubling. And I am eminently more interested in discussing the texts that do exist than theorizing about what's in the ones that don't.
All right, so let's talk about what we have. First of all, I just want to point out for the record, of course, that the special counsel, Bob Mueller, last summer, when he found out about the text messages, which did indicate bias by the senior agent Strzok, he removed him from the team, okay? He removed him immediately upon finding that out. But let's just share one of them that I know that you have talked about, as well as your Republican senatorial colleague, Senator Johnson. This one is from May 19th of last summer, so it's right after the 5-month glitch. And in it, Strzok texts Page referring to the Russia investigation ostensibly. You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern there's no big there. Okay? The assumption being made here is that they're talking about his willingness to join the Russia investigation. But my question to you is, Congressman, doesn't this show you that whatever his personal political beliefs were, which he's saying here, if I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. But he didn't have a bias against Trump on Russia. He's saying there's no big there. I don't think there's anything there.
You know what, Aaron, respectfully, it tells me the exact opposite, because just above that text is a conversation about impeachment. And every single FBI agent I know would look at what Bob Mueller is doing right now and saying, you are performing a national service from a counterintelligence standpoint and from a criminal standpoint. It's just not how many pelts you can tack up against the wall in terms of guilty pleas and convictions. Bob Mueller's also doing a counterintelligence investigation about a foreign adversary that attacked our country in 2016. And if that doesn't get an FBI agent excited enough to participate in an investigation, that's heartbreaking. So I read that text exactly differently. If it's not going to result in a conviction against the President of the United States, I'm not interested in participating. I don't know another Bureau agent that would take that approach.
All right, but I'm just making the point. He obviously didn't think there was a there. So he didn't go into the Russia investigation, which he then subsequently joined before Mueller removed him. He didn't go into it thinking the president was guilty. He went into it thinking the opposite. So as much as the guy, as you're pointing out, hates the president, he didn't see any there. He wasn't going in thinking he was going to find anything.
Well, the only thing I would say in response to that, Aaron, is the morning after the election, they're discussing impeachment. So if they're really open-minded, objective, fact-centric FBI agents, what are they doing discussing impeachment when the ink isn't dry on the ballot confirmation yet? This is the morning after, and they're talking about impeachment. So look, I have a lot of respect for you. You're going to have a really hard time convincing me that Peter Strzok should have been on this investigation.
Okay, so let me ask you, and by the way, again, I'm just pointing because I need to for the record, that Bob Mueller did remove him when he found out about these texts. So Peter Strzok was removed from this last summer. Just to make sure everyone knows. It wasn't like he stayed on this investigation for some period of time after this was discovered. Okay, in the text messages...
You've never heard me criticize Bob Mueller.
Right, and you have said that you've seen the texts which exist, the ones that we know about, personally. One that was sent the day after the election, which you're referring to impeachment, but one of the ones you've talked about, you quoted it as saying, quote, perhaps this is the first meeting of the secret society. You didn't give any context, okay? What was the context? Did they elaborate? What are we talking about, secret society?
It's right after they're lamenting the fact that Trump won North Carolina and that he won Florida, and they're really disappointed in the way the election turned out. And then about an inch down from that is a conversation about perhaps this should be the first meeting of the secret society. And then about 2 texts down, they say, let's talk about it with Andy. I don't know if that's Andy McCabe, and I'm not going to allege that it is. But it's eerily similar to what they said about the insurance policy.
You kind of are. You're throwing it out into the ether. I mean.
Well, Andy McCabe is mentioned throughout their text. I don't know if there's another Andy. So I don't know if there is or not. So I'm not going to malign Andy McCabe. I actually asked him directly about the insurance policy text, and he denied it. I take him at his word. But take him out of it. Here are 2 bureau agents talking about a secret society. I don't have a clue what they're talking about. I don't know whether one existed, but you know what, Aaron? It's not my responsibility to prove that. They're the ones who used the phrase. They're the ones that should explain it. I can't tell you what they meant. I can just tell you what they said. And they talking about a secret society right after they were talking about how depressed they were that Donald Trump won.
All right, let me ask you one question before we go here, since we're out of time. This is important. The president tonight, saying he doesn't recall whether he asked Andy McCabe who he voted for. Just to put the facts out there, we have confirmed Andy McCabe did not vote in the general election, and in the primary, he voted in the Republican primary in Virginia, Chairman. But obviously the report is, which the White House did not deny today, was that the president asked Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director, directly in the Oval Office, who he voted for. Do you think that that is appropriate in any way, shape, or form for a president to ask that of a deputy FBI director?
I don't think it's appropriate for anyone to ask that. Anytime there's a curtain involved, that tells me it's supposed to be private. There's a curtain at the voting booth I vote in. No one should ever ask anyone else who they voted for. I don't ask my wife whether she voted for me, in part because I'm not sure what the answer is, and I'm not sure I want to hear it. But it's none of my business who my kids vote for, who my wife votes for. I've never asked a cop in my entire life, well, are you a Republican or Democrat? It doesn't come up in the law enforcement context. So I hope Mr. McCabe was not asked that question, and I hope he didn't answer it because it's nobody's business.
All right. Thank you very much. Chairman Gowdy, I appreciate your time. Good to have you back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We don't yet even know the scale of how many children may have died. Initial reports indicate that at least 16 are dead. And the initial reports that this attack had come from Israeli tanks. As you know, the Israeli military has said it may have come from Hamas in a rocket which misfired. Do you know at this point? Do you have any more certainty?
No, I don't know, but I do know who's responsible for it. And that's Hamas, because they're using schools as weapons depots. And I think it would be a disservice to your viewers for a reporter from Gaza not to mention that in the last week, we had 2 different UNRWA schools where we had actually rockets found in the schools and handed over to Hamas. I also think it's a disservice.
These are 2 different UN schools, you're saying?
That's correct. That's publicly available information. It's kind of an important fact for your reporter to mention. And in addition to that, he may have wanted to mention a statement that was made not by the Israeli ambassador, not by the spokesman of the IDF, but by the UN Secretary General yesterday. And I want to read you what he said yesterday, not last year, yesterday. He said this: the Secretary General is alarmed to hear that rockets were placed in an UNRWA school in Gaza and that subsequently these have gone missing. He expresses his outrage and regret at the placing of weapons in a UN-administered school. By doing so, now listen, Aaron, exactly what he says. By doing so, those responsible are turning schools into potential military targets and endangering the lives of innocent children. UN employees working in such facilities, and anyone using the UN schools as shelter. This is yesterday. Do you not think that it's relevant to report on CNN that the Secretary General of the United Nations yesterday warned against the use of UN schools and shelter for rocket missile depots of Hamas?
And Ambassador, it is relevant. And let me ask you this,
Well, I've been
because
listening,
of what you said.
But Aaron, I've been listening for 2 hours of reports on CNN. I have seen split screens, horrible pictures that any decent human being would be horrified by. I have not heard a single person say what I just said to you now. And I think that that does a disservice to your viewers to not give them the context they need to make these judgments. Hamas is placing missile batteries in schools, in hospitals, in mosques, and there must be outrage by the world at Hamas to end this.
But Ambassador, there is also this, which is, and this is the latest information we have, which is that Israel, you did reach out to the UN 3 days ago. You told them to evacuate the school because of exactly what you just said.
That's right.
But here's my question, and the reason that we're showing these pictures, because these are dead children. Would Israel have taken the time to confirm that those children were out of the school before you fired? Send someone in to look. Would Israel have taken the time to confirm that those children were out of the school before you fired? Send someone in to look. Or do you think it's okay that you issued the warning and then just went ahead and fired?
Well, I think what you just
problem.
I think you have no basis for making the statement that you just made. Of course we wouldn't fire directly, but I don't know what happened in that school. What I understand is we gave people days to get out of that area. This is in the northern Gaza Strip. There's a good chance that it may have been a Hamas rocket that hit it. I don't know if somebody fired, a Hamas fighter fired directly from that school at our military who's operating there, and then we responded to fire. I don't know the facts. I do know that there's children, and I don't blame the media. Don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming the media for showing the pictures. What I'm blaming the media is for